environment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hyperthermia, hypothermia, dehydration from being too hot, definitely it can cause that as well. And you're gonna get that, now, today, like yesterday, it wasn't all that warm out. The day before, it was even less warm. Today, it's like 90 something, right? So you have somebody, let's say they haven't really trained for their race that they're doing, and all of a sudden it's hot out, and now they're running. Now what? They're gonna pass out, right? So, most of the time, if you're doing a marathon, it's gonna happen at past the halfway point and towards the end. Because that's when the folks that haven't trained appropriately usually have problems. There is something, speaking of environmental, there is something called exercise-induced hyperthermia, okay? And people don't present the same way that you would if somebody is having a heat stroke, because heat stroke traditionally they're like, oh, dry skin, right? And they're not sweating anymore. That's not the case in exercise-induced hyperthermia. They're still sweating, but their body temperature is so high from exercise and being out in the heat, they're still sweating, okay? Anybody know what the treatment is? Yes, but they get a rectal temp, and it's usually pretty high, and an ice bath. And you may have to give them Versed to keep them from seizing.
Good night.
Yeah. So at many marathons, in the main medical tent, they will have an ice bath to submerge these folks in, because their temperature can get up to like 107, 108, and you're cooking your brain at that point, right? So you've got to get their temperature down, and throwing water on them and putting cold packs in their armpits and groin is not going to bring their temperature down as quickly as it needs to be down. Okay. So yeah, if you're someplace and you've got somebody that's a victim of that, and you don't have an ice bath, see if you can get ice in it. Use your Mega Mover or something, just dump ice on them. And try to cool them down, because they can like seriously be dead or have long-term problems if you don't get them cooled down quick. And the ER is not really equipped to do that quickly. They're not used to that kind of stuff. So, are they going to be able to find their cooling blanket quickly? Probably not. Okay. They won't be on it fast enough. We have a much better chance of cooling that patient down before we get to the hospital. And that's why they even put them in the ice bath in the medical tent. Some of them don't even get transported to the hospital, because if you cool them down enough, they can actually be fine in like 2 hours and go home. The doctor can discharge them from the medical tent. So, it's wild. All right, so, action potential. So some of you guys are asking about this. And if you remember that calcium and potassium oppose each other. So that's why if somebody has too much potassium, you give them calcium to try to lower the potassium. Right? In terms of what follows what, sodium and calcium tend to follow each other. If that makes any sense. I wrote on here the drugs and where they work in what phase. So technically, amiodarone works in a couple different phases. It can block sodium and potassium, but procainamide works here in phase 0. So does a drug called flecamide, which sometimes they give for AFib. Okay. Does anybody remember what condition that the drug procainamide works for, that nothing else does besides electricity?
Isn't it refractory? Because, isn't it used instead of lidocaine and amio?
It can be, but it's a specific condition we talked about that young people sometimes have. Wolf Parkinson White. Okay. So WPW, the only drug that they can be given that will kill them is procainamide. Okay. All right. So amiodarone and lidocaine works in phase 3 during repolarization, and it basically slows it down. So that tries to break the craziness of VTAC and VFib. Okay. The beta blockers work in phase 4, which is like baseline and the resting potential. Yeah. So I like this slide because it kind of overlays the EKG with the different phases. So sometimes that makes better sense to people looking at it that way. Does it make any sense to you whatsoever? So, let's see.
Oh, wait. Maybe.
That is your phase 1 QRS. Phase 2 is the S to the beginning of the T.
Yeah, okay, now I see it.
Phase 3, then R.
Okay, I see it now.
Is phase 1
And then phase
the
1
R wave?
Q-wave.
Is that right?
That's the QR.
Phase
Yeah,
1 starts the
phase 4
QR.
is like,
Yup. And then
Phase 1 is QR and then,
no, it's phase 0.
Yeah, zero.
Phase
Zero's
4 is
the
the
high
end of the
point.
T until
And then
the
one
Q.
is where it starts coming down.
Would it be better for you guys if I printed this?
Four is
oh,
Yes.
okay, now I see the 0. Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Okay.
We're gonna have access
Phase
to
1's
those
RS.
slides.
I can put them up, but I can print this too.
Yes.
So when we're cardioverting, what is it flagging the machine when we push sync?
R wave?
R wave. Why? Can you see on here why that is?
No.
The absolute refractory period. Okay, so it's much less likely to put you into an arrest because like everything's closed, all right? Now, if you get over here, then you're more likely to put them into arrest, and any other part of it you can put them into arrest, but that part with the R wave is the safest to hit them with electricity. Okay.
And the jolt of electricity pretty much shorts out any,
It's a control or delete for your heart, basically.
just wiping the slate clean.
And letting it start working again. It's just doing it at a certain point on the arm versus a defibrillation that does it when you push the button. And you have to remember that if you're syncing and cardioverting, you have to keep your finger on the shock button until the energy is delivered. Because it could be a second or two, depending on how fast the rhythm is, before the energy is delivered. Okay. So sometimes there's a slight pause. Here's another diagram with different colors. Some people, that's why I showed different diagrams, because it makes sense to different people.
I do like
This one's a good one. Can you
Okay.
print this?
Color coded.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Okay.
Cheese.
Alright.
But it would be better if the EKG was the same colors too.
Oh, wait, can I? Oh, that'd be so cool. Are you talking about where on the lines they are? Yes.
I'm gonna make my own.
Okay. Hey, whatever works for you.
I like that one better though.
Okay.
I've seen a bunch of different charts, ones that show that the threshold potential is negative 40 millivolts, and then the resting potential is somewhere between 70 and 90, negative 70 and 90. Does it matter really?
No.
I've seen like different charts for different things.
Yeah. It's not something we really have to worry about. It's there, and it's gonna be slightly different for each person too, depending on what their underlying stuff is. Right? Alright. I know that stuff is confusing, but it helps you understand what the medications are doing that we're getting. Alright.